The medical station floated in the darkness of space like a small silver disk against the endless black. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed softly as Tyler walked down the long corridor toward the emergency wing. His shoes made quiet squeaking sounds on the polished floor. He'd been working here for almost 3 years now, and the sound still made him smile. It was the only human thing about this place. Tyler was a nurse. Not a fancy specialist or a brilliant surgeon. Just a nurse who changed bandages, checked vital signs, and held hands when patients were scared. Out here on the edge of known space, that was exactly what was needed. The station orbited a dead moon called Keeper 7. Nothing grew there. Nothing lived there. But it served as the emergency medical center for this entire sector of the galaxy. Ships came from everywhere when things went wrong. And things went wrong a lot out here on the frontier. Most of the staff weren't human. There were the Vrel, who looked like giant praying mantises with too many eyes. There were the Lumini, beings made of living crystal that reflected light like walking rainbows. Tyler was one of only 3 humans in a crew of over 200. Sometimes he felt lonely. Most times he felt needed. Today started like any other day. Tyler grabbed his coffee from the break room, wincing at how it tasted like burnt plastic. Real coffee didn't make it this far from Earth. He was reviewing patient charts when his supervisor found him. Vrel 12 was her name. Most humans just called her V. She had bright green compound eyes that could look in multiple directions at once. Right now, all of them were focused on Tyler, which meant something bad had happened. "We have an emergency," V said. Her voice came through a translator box on her chest, turning her clicking sounds into words Tyler could understand. Transport ship just docked. Full of refugees. Nearly 200 of them. Tyler set down his coffee. "What species?" "Salvine." His chest went tight. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Salvine. Their home planet had exploded decades ago when their sun went unstable. The survivors scattered across space like seeds in the wind, but they were dying out. Fewer than 10,000 remained in the entire universe. Seeing 200 of them in one place was like seeing the last pages of a disappearing book. "What happened to them?" Tyler asked. V's antennae drooped, which was her version of a sad expression. "Unknown plague. Spreading fast through their systems. It attacks their dual nervous system, shuts down their organs one by one. Our best doctors have been working for an hour. Nothing helps. They have maybe 3 days left. Probably less." Tyler followed V through the winding corridors to the emergency quarantine section. He'd never been in this part of the station before. They only used it for the worst cases, the ones too dangerous to treat in regular wards. The doors were thick metal reinforced with energy fields. Warning lights flashed red above every entrance. Inside, the ward looked like something from a nightmare. Rows and rows of glass containment pods lined the walls, stretching back farther than Tyler could see. In each pod lay a Salvine patient. He'd studied their species in medical school but had never seen one in person. They were beautiful in a strange, otherworldly way. Their skin was translucent like frosted glass, showing the delicate bone structure underneath. Patterns of light moved beneath their skin, bioluminescent markers that pulsed and shifted with their emotions. Right now, every single patient showed the same colors. Deep purple and heavy gray. The colors of despair and grief. "The chief elder is in critical condition," said Dr. Kress, a Lumini whose crystalline body sparkled under the medical lights. "We've tried every treatment we know. Nothing works. Their biology is too unique. Too specialized. We're watching them die and we can't do anything to stop it." Tyler walked slowly between the pods. Medical equipment beeped and hummed. For lines ran into alien veins. Monitors tracked vital signs in languages Tyler barely understood. But he didn't need to read the monitors to know these people were dying. He could see it in their faces. He could see it in the way their light patterns flickered weakly, like candles about to go out. He stopped at one pod near the center of the room. The nameplate on the glass read, "Thessera Chief Elder." She was ancient, her translucent skin so clear he could see her internal organs slowly shutting down. But her eyes were open. Sure. Intelligent. And they were looking right at him. "Human," she whispered. The translator on her pod rendered her soft clicking sounds into English. "You are human, yes?" "Yes, ma'am. My name is Tyler. I'm a nurse here." Her hand moved slowly, pressing against the inside of the glass. The light patterns on her palm began forming shapes. Deliberate shapes. Tyler's brain clicked into recognition mode. He'd studied this in xenobiology class. Salvine had 2 languages running at the same time. Spoken words and light patterns. The patterns expressed deeper emotions, things too complex for simple words. Right now, Thesara's light patterns were screaming one thing: desperation. The others don't understand our light speech, Thesara said softly. But you studied it. I see recognition in your eyes. You know what I'm really saying. Tyler nodded. I took a class on Salvine culture. That was years ago, but I remember some of it. Then you understand. Her light patterns intensified, pulsing faster. We need something. Something the others cannot give us. Something only your kind might understand. What do you need? Medicine. A specific treatment. No. Thesara's voice was barely a whisper now. Music. We need music. Songs. Your people have a custom, yes? An ancient one. You sing to those who are dying. You comfort them with songs. Do humans still do this? Tyler blinked, caught completely off guard. Of all the things he'd expected her to ask for, music wasn't on the list. You mean like singing to people in hospice? Yeah, we still do that. It's not medical treatment, but it's something we do. To comfort people. To let them know they're not alone. We need this. Thesara's entire body seemed to dim, her light patterns fading like a sunset. My people believe that the dying must be sung across the luminous veil. It's the barrier between life and whatever comes after. Without proper songs, we become lost in darkness forever. Our spirits wander alone for eternity. Around the ward, other Salvine were stirring in their pods. Listening. Their light patterns all began synchronizing, creating waves of desperate color that rolled through the room. When our world burned, Thesara continued, our death singers died with it. The old songs were never written down. They lived only in memory, passed from generation to generation. None of the young ones learned them. We thought we'd have time. We thought our world would last forever. Her voice cracked. Now we're dying far from home, and there's no one left who remembers how to sing us across. We'll be lost. All of us. Lost in the dark forever. Her hand trembled against the glass. Tyler looked around the ward at all the dying Salvine. 200 souls facing the end without comfort. Without hope. Just sterile medical equipment and alien doctors who meant well but couldn't understand what was really needed. Please, Thesara whispered, and her light patterns showed pure desperation now. You're a species that understands mercy. That understands death is more than just biology stopping. Sing to us, please. We're so afraid of the dark. Tyler felt something break open in his chest. He'd become a nurse because he wanted to help people. Because he believed that caring for someone in their worst moments was the most important work anyone could do. And here was someone begging for the one kind of help that had nothing to do with medicine or technology. Just simple human compassion expressed through song. I'll do what I can, Tyler said quietly. Thesara's light patterns shifted. Just for a moment they flickered to pale gold. The color of hope. Then they faded back to purple and gray as exhaustion claimed her again. Tyler stood there for a long moment looking at all the dying Salvine. He had no idea if he could actually help them. He wasn't a professional singer. He didn't know any Salvine songs. But he knew songs his grandmother had taught him. Songs his mother sang when he was sick as a child. Songs that made the scary world feel a little bit safer. Maybe that would be enough. He turned to leave the ward, his mind already spinning with questions. Would his supervisors even allow this? Was it against protocol? Did it matter if it was against protocol when people were begging for help? Behind him, Thesara watched through half-closed eyes as the human nurse walked away. Her light patterns pulsed one final message that only another Salvine could read. Perhaps we won't die alone after all. Tyler sat alone in the staff cafeteria, staring at a tray of food he had no interest in eating. The protein paste was supposed to taste like chicken. It didn't. Nothing out here tasted like real food anymore. But that wasn't why his stomach felt twisted in knots. He kept thinking about Thesara's face. About the desperate light patterns flickering under her translucent skin. About 200 people dying in fear, terrified they'd be lost forever in some dark void because no one remembered their songs. The cafeteria was nearly empty. Most staff ate in shifts, grabbing food quickly between emergencies. But sitting in the corner was Nina, one of the other humans on the station. She worked in maintenance, fixing broken equipment and keeping the aging systems running. Her uniform was stained with grease and she looked as tired as Tyler felt. You look like you've seen a ghost, Nina said, sliding into the seat across from him. Tyler explained everything. The dying Salvine. The request for music. The ancient belief about being sung across some mystical barrier. Nina listened without interrupting, her dark eyes serious. My grandmother worked in hospice back on Earth, Nina said when he finished. She used to say that singing to the dying was the most important thing she ever did. Not the medicine. Not the treatments. The singing. She said it reminded people they mattered. That someone cared enough to sit with them at the end. But is it right? Tyler asked. I mean, we're in a medical crisis. Shouldn't I be helping find a cure instead of singing songs? Nina shrugged. Can you find a cure? No. The doctor said it's impossible. Their biology is too different. Then what else can you do? Let them die terrified and alone. Nina leaned forward. Look, I'm just a maintenance worker. I fix pipes and electrical systems. But even I know that sometimes the most important thing you can offer someone is just being there. Showing them they're not forgotten. Tyler knew she was right. But he also knew his supervisor wouldn't see it that way. V believed in protocol. In following procedures. In using every available resource to find medical solutions. Taking time to sing would seem like giving up. He found V in her office 2 hours later. The Vrel supervisor was reviewing diagnostic reports, her multiple eyes scanning several screens at once. I want to spend time with the Salvine patients, Tyler said. Not doing medical work. Just being with them. Singing to them. All of V's eyes swiveled to focus on him. Explain. He told her about Thesara's request. About the Salvine beliefs regarding death and music. About how terrified they were of dying without their traditional songs. V's antennae twitched in agitation. Your duty is to assist in finding a cure. Not to waste valuable time on cultural rituals. The Salvine are dying because of a biological pathogen, not because of a lack of music. But if we can't cure them, then we work harder. V's translator made her voice sound flat, but Tyler could hear the frustration underneath. I understand you feel sympathy. It's a human trait. I've observed it in you before. But sympathy doesn't save lives. Science does. Medicine does. We need every staff member focused on finding a solution. What if there is no solution? Tyler asked quietly. Then we try until there's no time left. V turned back to her screens, dismissing him. I need you working on standard care protocols. That's an order. Tyler left her office feeling like he'd been punched. He understood her logic. In a crisis, every minute counted. Every resource mattered. But he also couldn't shake the image of Thesara's desperate light patterns. The universal language of someone begging for help. That night, Tyler couldn't sleep. He lay in his small quarters staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the station's life support systems. His grandmother used to sing him to sleep when he was little. Simple songs about stars and moonlight. He hadn't thought about those songs in years. Around 3 a.m, station time, Tyler made his decision. He pulled on his uniform and headed toward the quarantine ward. The corridors were nearly empty during night cycle. Only essential staff worked these hours and most of them were in other sections. Tyler used his medical credentials to access the quarantine wing. The doors hissed open and he stepped inside. The ward was dimmer at night, lit only by emergency lighting and the soft glow from the containment pods. The Salvine were restless. Their light patterns flickered erratically, showing distress and fear. Some had their eyes closed but weren't sleeping. Others stared at nothing, their skin darkening toward black. They were giving up hope. Tyler walked slowly to Thesara's pod. Her eyes opened as he approached, taking a moment to focus on his face. You came back, she whispered. I can't promise I know your songs, Tyler said quietly. I don't know anything about Salvine music. But I know some human songs. Songs we sing to comfort our own people when they're scared or dying. Would that help? Thesara's hand pressed against the glass from inside. Any song sung with genuine love and compassion carries the spirit home. The specific words don't matter. It's the intention, the emotion, the reminder that someone cares. She paused, her breathing labored. Please. We're so tired of being afraid. Tyler took a deep breath. He felt ridiculous. He wasn't a singer. He'd never performed for anyone except his shower walls. But these people were desperate and he was the only one willing to try. He started with a lullaby his grandmother had taught him. The melody was simple and gentle, about moonlight and stars and peaceful sleep. His voice was quiet and uncertain at first, barely above a whisper. The words were in English, which the Salvine couldn't understand. But that didn't seem to matter. The effect was immediate and startling. Thesara's light patterns changed. The chaotic flickering smoothed into rhythmic pulses that matched the tempo of his song. The desperate purple began fading, replaced by soft blue. Around the ward, other Salvines started responding. Their patterns synchronized with the melody, creating waves of gentle blue light that rippled through the room. Tyler's confidence grew. He continued singing, moving through other songs. A folk song about rivers flowing to the sea. A hymn his mother loved about grace and peace. A silly children's song from a show he'd watched as a kid. None of the Salvine understood the words, but they understood something deeper. Something in the rise and fall of the melody. The emotion carried in each note. The ward filled with soft blue light as dozens of Salvine synchronized their bioluminescence to his voice. Some of them smiled, or at least made an expression that looked like smiling on their alien faces. For the first time since they'd arrived, they looked peaceful. Then something impossible started happening. The air itself began to shimmer. At first, Tyler thought it was just reflections from the bioluminescent light bouncing off the glass pods. But the shimmer grew stronger. More defined. The temperature in the ward dropped suddenly. Tyler could see his breath misting in front of his face. "Keep singing," Thessera urged, her voice stronger than it had been in hours. "Please don't stop. They're hearing us. They're finding the way back." "Who's hearing us?" Tyler asked, but his voice cracked with emotion and confusion. "The ancestors," Thessera said, her light patterns blazing gold now. "The ones who crossed before us. They've been lost beyond the veil, unable to find their way back to guide us. But your song is opening the path. Keep singing." Tyler sang, even though his rational mind was screaming that what he was seeing couldn't be real. The shimmer in the air coalesced into shapes. Figures. Translucent beings made of the same bioluminescent light that pulsed beneath Salvine's skin. They wore strange clothing, ancient styles Tyler had only seen in historical databases. Their faces were kind and wise, and they moved through the ward like swimmers gliding through water. Spirits. Ghosts. Ancestors. Whatever they were here. The dying Salvine reached toward these figures with trembling hands. Their light patterns exploded into brilliant golds and whites. Pure joy. Pure relief. Around the ward, the light show was spectacular, like watching the northern lights dance in a bottle. Alarms started screaming throughout the station. The sudden temperature drop and strange energy signatures had triggered every sensor. Within seconds, the ward doors burst open. Medical staff poured in, led by V and Dr. Kress. They all froze, staring at the impossible scene before them. Tyler's voice faltered and stopped. The sudden silence felt heavy and wrong. But the damage was done. The supervisors had caught him disobeying direct orders. "What?" V said slowly, all her eyes fixed on the translucent figures floating through the ward. "Is happening here?" Thessera spoke up, her translator clear despite her weakness. The human opened the way. His songs created the bridge across the luminous veil. "Our ancestors heard. They came to guide us home. We're not lost anymore." The ancestral figures continued moving among the dying Salvine, touching them gently with translucent hands. Where they made contact, the Salvine's expressions shifted from pain to peace. The spirits began adding their own voices to the silence, creating harmonies that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Dr. Kress pulled out a scanner, her crystalline hands shaking. The device beeped frantically, displaying readings that made no scientific sense. Tyler stood in the center of it all, terrified he'd made everything worse, but unable to deny what everyone was witnessing. The impossible had become real and there was no going back. Retried. The observation room above the quarantine ward had never been so crowded. Station Commander Bricks stood at the front window, his 4 massive arms crossed over his chest. Behind him, 20 senior staff members argued in whispered conversations that grew louder by the minute. The Corthan commander was known for being practical and logical. His species had abandoned religion centuries ago. They didn't believe in anything they couldn't measure or touch. But right now he was staring at something that shouldn't exist. Down in the ward, translucent figures drifted between the containment pods like living light. They wore ancient Salvine clothing, robes and garments from a world that no longer existed. Each one moved with purpose, touching the dying patients gently, creating ripples of golden light wherever they made contact. "It's a contamination," Dr. Kress insisted, her crystalline body refracting the observation lights into rainbow patterns. "Some kind of energy-based pathogen creating mass hallucinations. We're all infected." "The sensors register real energy signatures," Nina argued. She'd been called from maintenance to analyze the technical readings. "These figures actually exist. They're not in our heads. They're physically here whatever they are." "Impossible." V's antennae twitched rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. "Consciousness cannot exist without biological substrate. These must be projections. Holograms. Something technological we haven't identified yet." Down in the ward, Tyler had been singing for over an hour. His voice was growing rough and strained, but every time he tried to stop, the Salvine's light patterns would dim and the ancestral figures would start to fade. So he kept going, working through every song he could remember. Lullabies his grandmother sang. Folk songs from summer camp. Even commercial jingles from his childhood that had somehow stuck in his brain. The specific songs didn't seem to matter. What mattered was the act of singing itself. The genuine emotion behind each note. 2 other humans had heard what was happening and come to the observation room. Derek worked as a junior medical assistant, young and eager but still learning. And there was Beth, who ran the station's small food service operation. Both volunteered to help if they were allowed. "We could take shifts," Derek offered, looking at Commander Brix. "Keep the singing going continuously so Tyler doesn't lose his voice." Brix didn't respond immediately. His species made decisions based on logic and observable facts. But the facts in front of him made no sense. Energy beings that violated thermodynamics. Consciousness existing without bodies. Ancient spirits appearing because a human sang some songs. Every regulation said to shut this down immediately. Quarantine the area. Evacuate staff. Treat it as a dangerous anomaly until they understood what was happening. But Brix was also a soldier. He'd spent decades in combat before taking this administrative position. He'd seen people die. He knew what fear looked like in a dying person's eyes. And right now, the Salvine weren't showing fear anymore. They were showing peace. "Let them in," Brix ordered. 3-hour shifts. Rotate the singers so no one loses their voice completely. "Commander, this is completely against protocol," V started. "Then we're writing new protocols." Brix's tone left no room for argument. His 4 arms uncrossed and he pointed down at the ward. "Those people are dying. We can't save them. But if music gives them comfort in their final hours, then we provide music. It's that simple." V's compound eyes all focused on the commander. "You're allowing this based on emotional reasoning, not scientific." "I'm allowing this based on compassion," Brix interrupted. "Which is something your species optimized out of your culture 3,000 years ago. Sometimes the most logical choice is the kind one." Down in the ward, Tyler noticed the new arrivals. Derek and Beth stood outside the containment area, wearing protective gear and looking nervous but determined. Tyler's voice was barely a whisper now. Derek caught his eye and nodded, then began singing a gospel hymn his father had taught him. The transition was seamless. The ancestral spirits continued their vigil, and the Salvine remained at peace. Thessera beckoned Tyler closer to her pod. He knelt beside it, grateful for the chance to rest his voice. "I need to explain," she said softly. "Before I go. You need to understand what you've done." "I'm just singing," Tyler managed, his throat raw. "You opened the luminous veil. The barrier between dimensions." Thessara's light patterns pulsed weakly but steadily. "When Salvine die, our consciousness doesn't end. Our neural patterns convert to pure bioluminescent energy. We transform into a different state of existence. But we exist in a parallel dimensional layer, like light passing through different densities of water." Tyler listened, trying to understand concepts that seemed more like science fiction than science. "Crossing between dimensions requires specific resonance frequencies," Thessera continued. "Our death songs were developed over millions of years. They created the exact vibrations needed to bridge the gap. When our world burned, those songs burned with it. Our dead have been crying out from beyond the veil, but the living couldn't hear them. Until you." One of the ancestral figures drifted close. An ancient Salvine male with elaborate light patterns covering his entire transparent body. He placed a glowing hand on Thessara's forehead, and she sighed with deep relief, like someone finally receiving water after days in the desert. "Human music carries something our modern songs lost," Thessera explained. "Raw emotion. Unfiltered feeling. Your species sings with your whole hearts, pouring everything you feel into every note. Most advanced species learn to suppress emotion as inefficient. But humans kept it. And that emotional resonance accidentally recreates the frequencies our ancient songs once carried." Across the ward, a young Salvine named Kelrin worked frantically at a portable terminal. He was one of the refugees, a researcher who'd been studying their cultural history. He was less affected by the plague so far, still strong enough to move around. His light patterns flickered rapidly as he absorbed information from old databases. "Elder Thessera speaks truth," Kelrin called out, his voice excited despite the grim circumstances. "I found references in our oldest surviving archives. The song crossing was always considered real by our ancestors. Modern scholars dismissed it as mythology, but it's documented in texts that predate our space age." He manipulated his terminal, projecting images onto the observation windows. Ancient Salvine texts appeared, thousands of years old, written in script that few could still read. There are even prophecies, Kelrin continued, his patterns showing shock and wonder. Prophecies about another species helping us when we were lost and far from home. They're described as beings who carry music in their hearts even when walking among distant stars. The description matches humans perfectly. The observation room fell silent. Everyone stared at the projected text. That's impossible, V whispered. These texts predate first contact with humans by millennia. Unless, Nina suggested quietly, it's describing something universal. Maybe the prophecy wasn't about humans specifically. Maybe it was about any species that kept their emotional connection to music alive. Humans just happened to be the ones who showed up when the Salvine needed help. Dr. Kress had been running continuous scans on the ancestral figures. Now she projected her findings for everyone to see. The energy signatures are real and measurable. But they violate several fundamental laws of physics. These beings exist without a power source. They maintain coherent structure without any biological framework. Their consciousness persisting beyond death, which should be impossible. Should be, Nina emphasized. But clearly isn't. In the ward, Beth had taken over from Derek. Her voice was softer, more melodic. She sang an old folk ballad about sailors finding their way home. The ancestral Salvine swayed to the rhythm, and more dying patients began their final transition. Their bodies started glowing from within, growing brighter and brighter until Tyler had to shield his eyes. Then, like dandelion seeds caught in wind, they dissolved into pure light. The light drifted upward, merging with the ancestral figures. For brief moments, Tyler could see the newly deceased Salvine in their spirit forms. They looked young and healthy again, free from pain and disease. Thessera watched her people crossing over one by one. Her light patterns showed profound peace mixed with sadness. We thought we'd lost everything when our world died. Our home, our culture, our connection to those who came before us. But you've shown us we were never truly alone. The ancestors were always there, just beyond the veil, waiting for someone to remember how to call them home. Around the ward, more Salvine were reaching their final moments. But they went peacefully, joyfully, their light patterns blazing with colors Tyler had never seen before. Gold and silver and crystalline white. The colors of hope and reunion and love. This changes everything, Kelrin said, his voice filled with wonder. If the Salvine have ancestors waiting beyond the veil, what about other species? What about all the cultures that abandoned their death songs and spiritual practices in favor of pure science? Dr. Kresh checked her scans again, her crystalline fingers trembling. My preliminary models suggest that all bioluminescent species might have similar dimensional layers. The Salvine aren't unique in transforming into energy after death. They're just the first species where we've observed it happening because someone created the bridge. You're saying humans can help other species reconnect with their dead? Brix asked. I'm saying human emotional expression through music creates quantum resonance patterns that bridge dimensional barriers, Dr. Kress replied. Whether that helps other species depends on whether they have ancestors waiting on the other side. The implications hung heavy in the air. For millions of years, species had developed their own death rituals and spiritual practices. Then they'd reached the stars and decided such things were primitive superstitions. They'd optimized emotion out of their cultures, focused purely on logic and efficiency. But what if they'd abandoned something real? Something important? Thessara's eyes were closing. Her light patterns were fading from gold to soft white. Tyler knelt beside her pod one final time. Thank you, she whispered. You've given us something more precious than life. You've given us peace. You've proven that love and memory are real forces, not just chemical reactions. That consciousness continues beyond death. That we're all connected to something larger than ourselves. Her body began to glow just like the others. Tyler watched as she transformed, her physical form dissolving into pure light. For just a moment he saw her spirit form clearly. She looked exactly as she had in life, but younger, stronger, free from age and illness. She bowed to him with deep respect, then turned toward the other ancestral figures. They welcomed her like family welcoming someone home after a long journey. Then they all began to fade, slowly becoming transparent, until only faint shimmers remained in the air. But they didn't disappear completely. Traces of their presence lingered, like perfume in an empty room or the warmth of sunlight after sunset. The ward fell quiet except for the gentle sound of Beth's singing and the soft hum of medical equipment. 30 Salvine had crossed over in the past hour. 170 remained, all of them watching with peaceful expressions as their time approached. They were no longer afraid of dying, because now they knew what waited on the other side. 3 days passed like a slow dream. The humans on the station worked in rotating shifts, keeping a constant stream of music flowing through the quarantine ward. Tyler sang until his voice gave out, then rested while Derek took over. Beth sang old country songs her grandfather taught her. Nina surprised everyone with a beautiful rendition of ancient folk melodies from her homeland. Even some of the non-human staff started humming along, though they didn't quite understand why it worked. One by one the Salvine crossed over. Each time, their bodies would glow with inner light before dissolving into pure energy. The ancestral figures would appear, growing more solid with each crossing, as if the barrier between dimensions was becoming thinner. They would welcome the newly dead with open arms, then fade back beyond the veil, taking their family members home. By the morning of the 4th day the ward was empty. 200 Salvine had died, but not a single one had died afraid or alone. The last to go was an elderly female who held Tyler's hand through the containment field and thanked him in broken English she'd learned just for that moment. "You gave us peace," she whispered. "Never forget that kindness matters more than science sometimes." Then she too transformed into light and drifted away, leaving Tyler alone in the quiet ward with tears running down his face. The station felt different after that. Word had spread through official channels and unofficial gossip networks. News outlets across the galaxy ran stories about the human nurse who sang to dying aliens and summoned their spirits. The Galactic Medical Council demanded detailed reports. Scientists wanted to study Tyler's brain patterns. Religious groups from a dozen different species sent messages calling him everything from a prophet to a dangerous anomaly. Tyler ignored most of it. He was exhausted in ways that had nothing to do with lack of sleep. He'd witnessed something profound and beautiful and terrifying, and he didn't have words to explain how it had changed him. Commander Brix called him to his office a week later. The Corthan's 4 arms gestured at a data pad on his desk. "You've become famous," Brix said. "Job offers from the core worlds. Prestigious research facilities. One hospital is offering 5 times your current salary just to have you on staff." Tyler picked up the pad and scrolled through the offers without much interest. They all wanted the same thing. To study him. To figure out what made human music special. To replicate the effect without needing actual humans. "What do you want to do?" Brix asked. "I want to help people," Tyler said simply. "That's why I became a nurse. Not to be famous or rich. Just to help." Brix nodded slowly. "The Galactic Council is creating a new position. Compassionate Presence Specialist they're calling it. Humans who work in medical facilities specifically to comfort dying patients. Not doctors. Not nurses in the traditional sense. Just people who sit with the dying and provide emotional support through music and presence." "They want me to train people?" Tyler asked. "They want you to help design the entire program." Brix leaned back in his chair. "This is bigger than the Salvine now. Other species are asking if humans could help their dying too. Species that abandoned their own death rituals centuries ago and now wonder what they lost." Before Tyler could respond, the office door chimed. Kelrin entered, the young Salvine researcher who'd chosen not to cross over with his people. He looked healthy but sad, his light patterns showing complex emotions Tyler was still learning to read. "I wanted to tell you before I leave," Kelrin said. "I'm taking a ship to the coordinates Elder Thessera provided. The location of our cultural archives." Thessera, in her final moments, had revealed the location of a hidden vault. A secret repository where the last Salvine archivists had stored memory crystals containing their entire cultural history. Everything they couldn't carry when they fled their dying world. "How long will you be gone?" Tyler asked. "I'm not coming back." Kelrin's patterns shifted to determined blue. "I'm going to document everything in those archives. Every song. Every ritual. Every piece of knowledge our people preserved. Then I'm going to ask you or another human to sing for me. I want to cross over and join my family. But first, I need to make sure our culture survives, even if only in recorded form." Tyler felt his throat tighten. "You don't have to die, Kelrin. You're still healthy. I'm the last Salvine in this sector. Maybe the last one who still cares about our old ways." Kelrin's patterns showed peaceful acceptance. "I don't want to live alone, slowly forgetting my language and culture until I'm just an alien curiosity in some research station. I want to be with my people. All of them. The living and the dead." They talked for another hour. Kelrin explained what he'd learned from studying the quantum resonance patterns. Human music didn't just work on Salvine. The emotional frequencies humans naturally produced when singing could potentially bridge dimensional barriers for any species. Each species had their own unique frequency, their own version of the luminous veil. But the principle was the same. You've given the galaxy something precious, Kelran said before leaving. You've proven that consciousness continues after death. That love and connection are real forces, not just chemical reactions in biological brains. Some species won't want to believe it. It threatens their entire worldview. But others have been waiting for this proof for centuries. After Kelran left, Tyler sat alone with Commander Brix. "What do you think?" the Korthan asked. "About all of this?" Tyler thought carefully before answering. "I think we got so focused on extending life that we forgot how to honor death. Every species out here is trying to live forever, to cure every disease, to prevent every loss. But death is part of life. And maybe the kindest thing we can do is help people face it without fear." Brix was quiet for a long moment. "My species doesn't believe in an afterlife. When we die, we believe that's the end. Nothing more." "Do you still believe that?" Tyler asked. "I don't know what I believe anymore," Brix admitted. "I saw something in that ward that shouldn't exist according to everything I know. But it was real. I can't deny that." He looked at Tyler with his large dark eyes. "If it works for other species, would you be willing to try?" "Try what?" "We have a Karath delegation arriving next week. Elderly warriors at the end of their lives. They heard about what happened with the Salvine. They're asking if a human could sit with them too." Tyler's eyes widened. The Karath were famous throughout the galaxy as proud warriors. Their entire culture was built on strength and stoicism. Asking for help, especially with something as vulnerable as dying, went against everything they believed. "They're afraid," Brix explained. "They won't admit it, but I can see it in their requests. They face death the way they face battle, with aggression and denial. But some of their elders are tired of pretending to be fearless. They want what the Salvine had. A peaceful crossing." "I don't know any Karath traditions," Tyler said. "Neither do they. That's the problem." Brix pulled up historical files on his screen. The Karath abandoned their death rituals 500 years ago. They decided that acknowledging death was weakness. But their ancient culture had elaborate ceremonies. Chanting. Drumming. Songs about honoring fallen warriors. Tyler looked at the files, seeing images of ancient Karath in ceremonial armor, standing around funeral pyres while singers chanted in their guttural language. "Will it work?" he asked. "If I sing human songs to Karath warriors?" "That's what we need to find out," Brix said. "Kelran's research suggests the specific songs don't matter. It's the emotional resonance. The genuine compassion. The willingness to be present with someone in their most vulnerable moment." Over the next few days, Tyler prepared. He studied Karath culture, learning about their history and values. He practiced songs that felt appropriate for warriors. Strong melodies. Rhythmic chants. Music that honored courage while acknowledging that even the bravest people feel fear. The Karath delegation arrived on a small transport ship. 15 elderly warriors, each one covered in ceremonial scars from a lifetime of battles. They moved slowly with dignity, but Tyler could see the pain in their eyes. They were dying from age and accumulated injuries. Their bodies were simply worn out. Their leader was named Drax. He was massive even by Karath standards, easily 3 times Tyler's size. His face was crisscrossed with old scars and one of his eyes was cybernetic. He looked like he'd survived 1,000 battles. "You're the human?" Drax asked, his voice like gravel in a metal drum. "Yes, sir. My name is Tyler." "You sang to the Salvine. Summoned their ancestors." "It wasn't a question. I sang to comfort them. What happened after that, I still don't fully understand." Drax studied him for a long moment with his one good eye. "Karath don't believe in spirits or ancestors. When a warrior falls, he simply ends. That's what we're taught. What we've believed for centuries." "Then why are you here?" Tyler asked gently. The old warrior's scarred face showed something Tyler never expected to see from a Karath. "Uncertainty. Maybe even fear. Because some of my warriors are afraid," Drax admitted quietly. "They won't say it. They'd rather die than admit weakness. But I see it. I've led troops my entire life. I know what fear looks like." He paused. "And if I'm being honest, I'm afraid too. I've spent my whole life fighting. Never stopping. Never resting. Now I'm dying and I don't know how to face it without violence. I don't know how to just let go." Tyler felt something break open in his chest. This proud warrior, this giant covered in scars from 100 battles, was admitting to being afraid. It took more courage than fighting ever could. Would you like me to sit with you? Tyler asked. I can't promise anything except that you won't be alone. Drax nodded slowly. Among my people we die alone. We believe it's the warrior's final test. But maybe we've been wrong. Maybe there's no shame in wanting someone there at the end. Tyler smiled. No shame at all. The Karath warriors were settled in a special section of the medical wing, designed to accommodate their massive frames and specific environmental needs. Unlike the Salvine's quarantine pods, these were open beds with minimal medical equipment. The Karath weren't sick with a plague. They were simply old, their bodies breaking down after centuries of combat and hard living. Tyler sat beside Drax's bed, feeling small next to the enormous warrior. The old Karatha's breathing was labored, each breath sounding like it took tremendous effort. Around the room, 14 other elderly warriors lay in similar conditions, each one trying to maintain a stoic expression even as pain showed in their eyes. Tell me about your death songs, Drax said, his voice softer than before. What do humans sing about when someone is dying? Tyler thought carefully. We sing about a lot of things. Sometimes about going home. Sometimes about peaceful rest after a long journey. Sometimes we sing about the people we love or memories that matter. It depends on the person and what they need to hear. Karath used to have songs too, Drax admitted. My grandmother remembered them. Before we became a spacefaring species, before we decided that acknowledging death was weakness, we had chants for fallen warriors. Songs about honoring courage. About joining the great battle beyond the stars. His cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on Tyler. My grandmother sang them to me once when I was very young. I thought they were beautiful. But then I learned such things were considered primitive. Shameful. So I never sang them again. Do you remember any of the words? Tyler asked. Drax was quiet for a long time. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he began to chant. The words were in the ancient Karath language, guttural and rhythmic. Tyler couldn't understand them, but he could hear the emotion underneath. Pride. Sorrow. Hope. All the things warriors weren't supposed to feel but did anyway. The other Karath in the room stirred. Some of them opened their eyes, listening. One elderly female began chanting along, her voice cracking but determined. Then another joined. And another. Within minutes, all 15 warriors were chanting together, remembering words they'd been taught to forget. Tyler felt goosebumps rise on his arms. This was what Thessera had talked about. Not the specific songs but the act of honoring death with music. Of facing the end together instead of alone. When the Karath chant faded into silence, Tyler began his own song. He chose something with a strong rhythm, a marching cadence. A song about soldiers coming home after a long war. His voice blended with the memory of the Karath chant, creating something new. Something that honored both human and Karath traditions. The effect was slower than with the Salvine but it came. The air began to shimmer. The temperature dropped. And massive figures started materializing in the room. Ancient Karath warriors. But these weren't like the Salvine ancestors. They wore armor from centuries past, ceremonial gear decorated with symbols Tyler didn't recognize. They carried weapons that looked more ritualistic than practical. And they stood in perfect military formation around the beds, like an honor guard. Drax's cybernetic eye went wide. His organic eye filled with tears. The fallen company, he whispered. The warriors who crossed over before us. I thought it was just a myth. The largest of the spirit warriors stepped forward. His armor was more elaborate than the others, marking him as someone of high rank. When he spoke, his voice resonated directly in everyone's minds, bypassing the need for translation. We have waited for you, brother, the spirit warrior said. Waited for someone to remember the old songs. To open the path back. The battle is over. You can rest now. Drax tried to sit up, his massive frame shaking with effort. I thought when we died we just ended. That there was nothing after. There is always something after, the spirit warrior replied. You believed yourself alone because you couldn't hear us calling. But we were here. We've always been here, waiting to welcome our brothers and sisters home. Around the room, more spirit warriors appeared beside each dying Karath. They stood at attention, showing respect to the fallen. Some placed translucent hands on the shoulders of the dying, offering comfort and strength. Tyler kept singing, working through different songs now. Derek and Beth had arrived and joined in, creating a harmony that filled the room. The music seemed to strengthen the spirit warriors, making them more solid, more real. I've been so afraid, Drax admitted, his voice breaking. Afraid that my life meant nothing. That I'd be forgotten. That all the battles and sacrifices would just disappear into darkness. Nothing is forgotten, the spirit warrior said. Every act of courage, every moment of honor, every time you protected the weak or stood for what was right. It all matters. It all continues. We carry those memories with us beyond the veil. Over the next several hours, the Karath warriors began their crossings. Unlike the Salveen who dissolved into light, the Karath simply seemed to fade, their physical forms becoming transparent until they matched the spirit warriors around them. As each one crossed over, they stood tall and strong, all signs of age and injury gone. They saluted their living comrades, then turned to join the fallen company. Drax was the last to go. He gripped Tyler's hand with surprising gentleness for such a massive warrior. "You've given my people something beyond measure," he said. "We thought strength meant facing everything alone. You've shown us that true strength is accepting connection. Accepting that we're part of something larger than ourselves." He paused, his breathing shallow. "Thank you for sitting with an old warrior. For reminding me that it's okay to be afraid. That asking for help isn't weakness." "It was an honor," Tyler said, and meant it. Drax's body began to fade. His spirit form stood up from the bed, young and powerful again. The old warrior looked at his hands in wonder, flexing fingers that no longer hurt. The spirit warriors saluted him and he saluted back. Then, together, the entire fallen company began to fade beyond the veil. But before they disappeared completely, the lead warrior looked at Tyler one last time. "You are a bridge builder, human. You help those who are lost find their way home. This is a great gift. Use it well." Then they were gone, leaving only the faint shimmer in the air that Tyler was learning to recognize as the boundary between dimensions. The medical staff stood in stunned silence. Dr. Kress had recorded everything, her scanners running continuously. The data would keep scientists busy for years. But for Tyler, the science didn't matter as much as what he'd witnessed. Two different species, both believing their dead were simply gone, discovering that consciousness continued in ways they'd forgotten or never known. News of the Karath crossing spread even faster than the Salveen story. Within days, delegations from dozens of species began arriving at the station. Some were dying patients seeking the same peaceful crossing. Others were researchers wanting to understand the phenomenon. Still others were religious leaders whose ancient texts suddenly seemed less mythological and more prophetic. The Galactic Council held emergency sessions to address what they were calling the human bridge phenomenon. They established new classifications, new protocols, new entire branches of medical service focused on end-of-life comfort rather than just life extension. Tyler was offered positions on the council, teaching roles at prestigious universities, research opportunities that would make him famous throughout the galaxy. He turned down most of them. Instead, he stayed at the small station orbiting Keeper 7 and helped train other humans in what was being called compassionate presence work. Nina left maintenance and joined the program full-time. Derek and Beth brought friends from Earth. Within months, there were over 50 humans working at stations across the sector, all focused on sitting with dying beings and offering comfort through music and genuine presence. The work was hard. Tyler sat with hundreds of dying people over the following year. Not all of them saw their ancestors. Not every crossing was peaceful. But every single one of them was grateful to not be alone at the end. And that, Tyler learned, was what mattered most. Kelran returned 6 months later as promised. He documented everything in the Salveen archives and was ready to cross over. They met in the old quarantine ward where it had all begun. The faint shimmer in the air was still there, stronger now, as if the veil was thinner in places where many had crossed over. "Are you sure?" Tyler asked the young researcher. "I've never been more sure of anything," Kelran replied. His light patterns showed peace and anticipation. "I've preserved my people's culture. Now I want to join them beyond the veil. To be with my family again. To add my knowledge to the collective consciousness our ancestors maintain." Tyler sang the Salveen death songs Kelran had taught him, his pronunciation much better now after months of practice. But he also sang human songs, the lullabies and hymns that had started everything. The air shimmered, and the Salveen ancestors appeared, led by Thessera herself. "You've done well," she said to Kelran, her spirit form glowing with pride. "Our culture will survive because of your dedication." Kelran's body began to glow. He looked at Tyler one last time. "Thank you for showing us the way home. For reminding the galaxy that some truths are universal. That love and memory are forces as real as gravity." Then he transformed, his physical form dissolving into bioluminescent light that drifted upward and merged with the ancestral forms. Young Kelran appeared among them, vibrant and joyful, carrying with him all his scientific knowledge combined with ancient wisdom. The ancestors welcomed him, then faded back beyond the veil. Tyler stood alone in the ward, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. He thought about all the beings he'd helped cross over. All the families reunited. All the ancient traditions rediscovered. It had started with one desperate request from a dying elder, and now it was changing how the entire galaxy viewed death and consciousness. Commander Brix found him there an hour later. "Another delegation requesting our services," the Korthan said. "The Vrel this time. Even V has admitted she wants to learn more about her people's old death rituals." Tyler smiled. "How many?" 20 to start. But more will come. They always do now." Brix looked around the ward. "You know what I think? I think humans aren't special because you're smarter or stronger than other species. You're special because you never stopped singing. Even when you reached the stars, even when you had technology that could do almost anything, you still carried your lullabies and folk songs and sacred hymns into space. Maybe that's what makes us human," Tyler said quietly. "We feel things deeply. We express emotions through art and music. And we understand that some things matter more than efficiency or logic." Brix nodded. "The galaxy was so focused on optimizing everything that we forgot how to be present with each other. How to honor life by honoring death. You've reminded us of something we lost along the way." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the faint shimmer in the air where the veil remained thin. Somewhere beyond that barrier, countless ancestors waited. Salvine and Karath and dozens of other species, all of them existing in a form of consciousness that science was only beginning to understand. But Tyler didn't need to understand it completely. He just needed to keep singing. To keep sitting with the dying. To keep showing beings from across the galaxy that they didn't have to face the end alone. Because in the end that was what mattered most. Not the science or the fame or the revolutionary discoveries. Just the simple act of compassion. Of being present with someone in their most vulnerable moment. Of singing them home. The station's lights flickered slightly, a reminder that new patients were arriving. Tyler took a deep breath and headed toward the medical wing. There was work to do. There were always people who needed comfort. And he would be there for them, singing the songs that opened the way between worlds, building bridges between the living and the dead, one gentle melody at a time. Because that was what humans did best. They remembered how to care. How to feel. How to honor every life with dignity and grace. And sometimes, that made all the difference in the universe. Retry.